following program contains coarse language and mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised. In other words, y'all gonna hear some on this one.
Okay, hey guys. Okay, so Fear has been bugging me for a while to do story time videos. So essentially do my makeup while telling a story, because we have some crazy stories. So today is in fact November 19th, which is our daughter's birthday, as some of you may know. So I'm gonna take you back to November 19th of 2005. When she was born, and I'm going to tell you the story of her birth. So buckle up. Okay, so as I said, she was born November 19th of 2005. She was actually due on the 15th, so she was 4 days late. Thanks, honey. Sorry, I just hear a noise upstairs. It's funny because I was, at certain points in my pregnancy, they thought I was going to have her early. So I was told to not go anywhere, not leave the house. I was on bed rest for, from 36 weeks on until her due date. And then they until about a week before her due date. And then they said, do whatever you want. But yeah, so my pregnancy with her wasn't wonderful. Wasn't terrible either though. November 19th, my mother came over that morning. We were going to go Christmas shopping because it's, getting to be that time of year. My mother, has this tradition. She buys her goddaughters, a new Christmas ornament every year for their tree. So that was our prime intention or need that day, if you will. Sorry, I'm just trying to blend as much as I can. I got a little too much on my nose. So yeah, we went to the mall. And from the time I got in the shower that morning, because she showed up, I wasn't aware she was coming. She just showed up. Hey, I'm taking you to the mall. I had been a little bit sad, a little bit low the few days prior. I think because I'm not really sure. My pregnancy was ending. Maybe it was just sad. I don't know. But so anyway, she picked me up and we went to the mall. But from the time I got in the shower, my back felt funny. It really hurt. It was like cramping almost in my back. And mind you, I was 23 years old when I had Andy. So, or Shabadoo as we call her. So I was young, but I kind of suspected what was happening. So anyway, I got in the shower, got dressed, and we went to the mall to go shopping. So we were at the mall for 2-3 hours. Walked around. It wasn't getting horribly worse, but there was stuff happening. So and we were actually in the retail store that I worked at the time. And I said to my mother, we need to call Sean. I think I'm in labor. So, of course, she was not happy with me because I was supposed to go to the hospital as soon as I thought I was in labor because I have a bad heart. Anyway, so we called Sean from my store, explained to him, you can't go to work because he was supposed to work afternoons that day. Explained to him, don't go to work. Think I'm in labor. We went home first. Yeah, we went home, picked up Sean, picked up my bag and all that stuff. And then away we went to the hospital. So from the time we get to the hospital, the nurses were saying that the baby was moving around so much. Your baby's, I can't remember now what she said, but I was offended at the time because she was essentially saying like the baby wasn't sitting still, like was freaking out kind of thing. Like, and I was just like, oh my goodness, what does that mean exactly? So it turns out Andy had what they called well, they never really told me a medical term, I guess, but her placenta wasn't shaped right, they said, and which made her umbilical cord too short. So she couldn't descend like babies are supposed to. So what ended up happening is they broke my water to try and regulate my labor because my contractions weren't proper and all that stuff. So in breaking my water, they found that she'd had a bowel movement, which is called mercomium for anybody who's, onto the baby sting, into the baby information. So yeah, that made things a little bit more dire. They were a little bit more concerned once they found that, because that means the baby could be in distress, which she was. So yeah, then they told me I'd probably have to have a C-section. They told me to give me about an hour to see if my labor would calm down and regulate itself. It did not. So, and actually it ended up being 15, 20 minutes and they were done. They weren't giving me any more time. I was going in for the C-section. So I don't know, a lot of people, anybody that knows me knows I'm a bit strange. I'm a bit difficult of a person. I don't speak my mind that much. I always say I'm fine. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. So I didn't complain about anything during labor other than my back hurts. Can we do something about my back? Every time I tried to move from laying just flat on my back, the baby would go into decels, which means her heart rate would plummet, and that wasn't good for the baby. So they'd make me go back to a position that she could be okay in. Her heart rate would go back up. So then they knew she was all right. So that was really my only complaint. I ended up with a catheter, which most women do, especially when they're assuming you're going for a C-section. The catheter was very difficult to get in. Apparently, I have a very abnormally narrow urethra. Only thing narrow about my whole fucking body, apparently, the urethra, which is not a good thing to be narrow. Anyway, so and then they got the monitor on her head, which is very difficult to endure when you don't have any pain management. And because I wanted to go natural labor, but then they told me my heart couldn't handle it. So I was supposed to have an epidural as soon as I was in labor. However, because the labor was so erratic and from the time I got there, everything was crazy, the epidural never happened. It wasn't something that they were worried about. They were more worried about her, which I get. So anyway, we ended up going for a C-section. The nurses at the hospital were fantastic. I love them so much. And they were great. The only when I went to go up onto the operating table, a nurse pulled on my catheter, and I screamed out bloody murder. And she was so upset with herself. I apologized about 1,500 times because I didn't make a sound through labor. I just sat there and was like, oh, this is not good. I don't like this. But I was actually very, very quiet in labor, which I was not expecting in myself. I was expecting to be a holy fuck, this hurts type person, but I wasn't. I was very quiet, very stoic, very concentrating on my task and what I was doing. I was bringing my baby into this world. So anyway, we get into the operating room. Luckily, they got my my epidural or spinal block. They got it the first try because they told me they were only going to try once. If they didn't get a spinal block, then they were going to like knock me out and deliver her, which meant that Sean couldn't be in the room. And it was our first baby, so he really wanted to be in the room and all that stuff too. So luckily they got my spinal block on the first try. And Sean could come in. Now, I say luckily. I'm not so sure that Sean considers it luck anymore, because he did not listen to their warning. The nurse told him outside the operating room, do not look over the curtain. Walk straight by. Don't look at the curtain. Just go. Go straight to her head. Sean did not listen to this. Sean did not go. Well, he went straight to my head. However, he did turn and look on behind the sheet, behind the curtain. That meant that Sean saw all of my insides, my intestines, my small bowel, all of that stuff. Because when they're delivering a baby, especially an emergency C-section, which mine was, they just get you out, or get the baby out as fast as they possibly can. So that means just pulling stuff out and throwing it in a bowl next to me. So Sean unluckily saw that, which he's talked about and reminded me about how many times, but I think it's hilarious. So anyway, she was out, and she wasn't a good color when she first came out. The first thing they told me was, don't worry, we'll bring her back. That's what the anesthesiologist said to me. And my response was, back from where? Because don't worry, we'll bring her back is not a good thing to say to a first-time young mother who's laying on an operating table, paralyzed from the chest down.
Back to life!
Back to life. There she is yelling in the background. But anyway, she was not a good color. It took a minute or two for her to make noise and make her presence known to the world. For me, it felt like a lifetime before she cried, before I could hear her. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I remember just saying over and over again, I don't hear her. I don't hear her. I don't hear her. But luckily, eventually, I heard her. So, she had a bowel movement and aspirated it, which means she had inhaled it into her lungs, which meant that she had a type of pneumonia. That's not great. But she was, so she had to be in the NICU on IV antibiotics for 7 days, which was terrible because I had to be on a separate floor, where I couldn't see her all the time, which was horrible for me. Not good for a first-time mom. It really pushes the postpartum depression, the chances of you having an issue with postpartum depression. That's not working for me. Let's try this. That's better. See, I have a hard time seeing. So I've got a couple different mirrors to try and get me through. But yeah, so she was born at 7:17, or as she likes to say, she was not born, she was released or stolen from her cozy home, which she was not ready and willing to vacate. She has told me that just this morning even. She was thieved from her beautiful, snuggly home where she had become a very accustomed to living. Sorry, I'm crazy about my eyebrows, but it's funny. I get a lot of people that compliment me on my eyebrows, and maybe it's because I take so friggin' long drawing them in. Anyway, so I was on the 4th floor. She was up on 7. So by the time, so I got to see her. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I got to see her for two minutes or so. They let me see her. I got to hold her for about 30-40 seconds. Her oxygen monitor started to beep, so they said she had to go back in her isolate with her oxygen, because she was actually in a full-blown isolate, had to have oxygen and IV right away. So she couldn't really be held all that much. Which is really crappy. It was really upsetting for me. I just sat in my hospital room saying, she's alone. She's alone. She's been brought into this world and put into a little clear box, and they've poked and prodded at her, and they've got oxygen in her nose, and like I was just so upset that was the way she came into this world. It was really upsetting for me. But you know what? At least she's here and she was alive, and they got her through it. So you gotta be grateful for the blessings that you have, I guess. But yeah, so I immediately, as soon as I got settled in my room, I immediately made Sean go to see her. I made him spend as much time with her as he could, as much time as the NICU nurses would allow. They eventually made him leave because, well, they were like, you need to go back to your wife, even though I told him to be there. They wanted him to come back to me, but also it was nighttime, and they wanted him out. But anyway, so he came back to me, and we sat the rest of the evening just kind of discussing everything that had happened and unbelievable course of events, because my labor was about 9 hours, and it wasn't good. My mother ended up calling in the family. My brother and his wife had just had a baby a couple weeks prior, and they even came because they were worried. It was kind of scary. So yeah, then my younger brother and his girlfriend were there as well, and I mean, they came from 2-3 hours away to be with me because it was scary. But once I was in my room and she was in her room, everybody kind of relaxed a little bit and went home for the night anyway. So yeah, that was her delivery. Fast forward to, so she did pretty well in the NICU. They immediately put a soother in her mouth, which drove me crazy because I was one of those mothers. I did not want my kids having a soother in their mouth all the time. I wanted to be able to teach them to I wanted my children to know how to self-soothe. Saying that 5 times fast. So I was a reader. I had a girlfriend that was a reader, and she, showed me all the books because she had a baby already as well. And I wanted to be a natural mother kind of thing. So I'm going to do highlight after I do my eyes because I always mess up the highlight anyway. I'm going to do a quick setting powder before I go to my eyes. So yeah. Then, oh, that's too much setting powder. Oh my goodness. Oh, totally caked it on my face right there. Help! Get out of my way here. Tissues. I never said I was a professional in any way. hopefully that doesn't look too bad. Anyway. So they put a soother in her mouth right away. They also started giving her formula right away, which I also wasn't happy about because I wanted to breastfeed. I wanted to, I wanted to be that natural mom as much as I could. My family was really big on breastfeeding. I don't want to say it was important to them, but it was kind of, something that I was told and taught, like that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to breastfeed your babies. So yeah, it was important to me to breastfeed. So I didn't get to see her. So she was born at 7 o'clock or so in the evening. I didn't get to see her again until 11 o'clock the next morning, because I didn't do well after the surgery. My blood pressure was really, really low. So they kept the spinal block going for overnight. They didn't let me kind of be able to and I kept my catheter in. They wanted me in bed. So yeah, they didn't let me be able to feel my feet and everything again until morning. So yeah, and then it took a few hours to be able to actually get up and move around. By the time I lied to them. I told them that I could feel my legs and I could walk, and I really couldn't. I stumbled to get to the wheelchair and I could barely. I don't know if anybody's ever had a spinal block before, but it is a very, very odd feeling. When you unfreeze, I guess, I don't know if that's the term I should use, but when your body becomes able to feel itself again and walk around, it's a slow process. It's a very, very strange process, where it comes back in pieces and in parts, and you can't necessarily, my wig's coming off. You can't necessarily control yourself in certain ways. So it's a bizarre feeling. But anyway, I lied and I told them I could feel a lot more than I could, just so I could get to see her, because I wanted to see my baby. So anyway, got myself in the wheelchair with Sean's help and got down to up to the 7th floor, sorry, to see her, hold her, cry about how beautiful she was. Because the first time I got to hold her was very, very quick, and everybody was in the room. My mother, my father, my brother, my sister-in-law, and then my other brother and his girlfriend, and my husband's mother and his aunt was actually there too. So the first time I got to hold her, there were so many people around. It wasn't really my time with her, I didn't get time to hold her and squeeze her and like really appreciate my baby. This is my baby. So yeah, until that morning. So I just sat and looked at her. Oh, if you've got babies, you understand. Just looked at her, looked at every piece of her, every finger, every toe. As much as I could. She had an IV in her hand, and when they're babies, they actually use like a medicine cup, the little tiny clear or kind of white medicine cups. She was that small that they had the IV in her hand, and then the medicine cup went over her entire fist so that she couldn't pull at the IV at all, which is genius. In my opinion, I think that's brilliant. I don't know whoever thought of that, but kudos to you. Who thinks of that? But anyway, I finally got to hold her. I got to smush her. She was the most perfect. Round-headed. She was a C-section, so of course she didn't have to go through the birth canal and get all squished. But round head, perfect. Oh, her hair was so soft and beautiful. They bathed her, of course, as soon as they got her up to the NICU and made her all sparkly clean. My hair's falling out. But she was chubby and just round butterball baby. Butterball baby. Just, I couldn't get over her, I loved her. From the moment I met her, she was my perfect little angel. And that's all there was to it. That's all there was to it. She was my girl. And her and I stayed home through most of the time where she was little. So her and I we were best buds. But anyway, so yeah, I got to meet her finally, like really meet her, and try to breastfeed because I wanted to do that. Breastfeeding didn't go great. She was not all that happy about it. She wanted the bottle rather than breastfeeding. I don't know if anybody knows this, but it's a lot more difficult to breastfeed than it is to just suck out of a bottle. Drips right into their mouth, so it's so much easier for them. A lot of babies, if they get the option, would prefer the bottle. So anyway, we had a little bit of a hard time with that, but she finally got going. Having you know, the scene in The Office where Jim and Pam have to have a consultant come in, and like a breastfeeding consultant come in, and the guy's like touching Pam's boob and everything. Funnily enough, that's her husband in that scene. But anyway, it was kind of a similar situation with me, except for it was a woman. But I remember Sean being like so kind of weirded out by it, but at the same time, like, ha ha ha, someone was touching your boob. But anyway, so yeah, we finally got breastfeeding, and then it turned out she developed a dairy allergy. So that kid could puke. Oh my goodness, could that kid puke? Oi, it was unbelievable, the amount of baby vomit. I've never... until then, I'd never seen a baby hurl like that before. It was unreal to me. She used to be able to splat, and I'm talking 3 feet, and she was like a little tiny 9-pound baby. Like, it was hilarious to me. But anyway, so yeah, she developed a dairy allergy, which made things even more difficult. Made it mean that I couldn't eat dairy anymore, which wasn't a huge deal for me, like preference wise. Like, I could give up dairy, it wasn't a huge deal. The problem is that it's hard because dairy's in everything. Like, there's even a lot of margarines that still have some traces of dairy in it. So and like salad dressings and like everything, it was really difficult to try and find alternatives and stuff that she wouldn't react to. But anyway, so, yeah, it was difficult. We had to get different formulas, stuff like that. She ended up not breastfeeding for very long, but that's okay. So yeah, and then, day 3, I'm not sure exactly, I really started noticing that my incision hurt. Like, it wasn't a normal, pain of, oh, I just had surgery. There was in my opinion, there was something wrong. So I tried to tell my doctor, and she kind of sloughed it off, or they kind of sloughed it off, because what happened was my doctor, my surgeon, did my C-section, and then I didn't see her. I saw her that morning when the first time, like when I met Shabadoo, when I was holding her, I saw the doctor that morning. But then I didn't see her again. She just had her residents come and check up on me, which is normal practice, and that's fine. But the residents didn't listen to me. I told them, I think my incision is infected. It hurts. Like, my incision doesn't feel right. And they were not concerned about it. So, and nobody really even looked at it even. They were just like, you're fine. Incisions hurt. Of course it hurts. You just had major abdominal surgery. That's what one doctor said to me. Thanks, Doc. But, so yeah, what they did was on the 3rd day, which is normal and normal practice, if you will. On the 3rd day, they discharged me, but they discharged me to a another hospital room in a wing of the hospital that wasn't really being used at the time. So she was born in Ontario, which I maybe should have said by now. But at the time, and probably still, they didn't have enough money to run the entire hospitals. So they had wings shut down. They didn't have enough money to staff them. Enough money or enough staff, enough money to pay for staff to have them open. So I got transferred to what they called a almost home room, and which meant I was still in the hospital. I could still be there because I had to, or I wanted to be able to feed the baby every 4 hours when she fed, either breastfeed or bottle, whichever. If she wouldn't take the breast, then I would give her a bottle, of course. But I wanted to be the one feeding her to have that bonding time, and that's very normal and natural, and they were encouraging of that. So yeah, I stayed in this nearly homeroom. They discharged me before noon, I'm pretty sure, on on that third day, and by dinner time I was in emerge dying. I was upstairs for Andy's 4 o'clock feeding, or Shabadoo's 4 o'clock feeding. I was trying to feed her, and I kept the nurses thought I was falling asleep, and they thought it was funny that I was falling asleep while I was nursing the baby. But what really was happening is I was going in and out of consciousness. I was, and then I would come to again. And so eventually someone noticed, I think it was my mother, that I didn't look very good, because my mother's very chatty, and she spent a lot of time in hospitals because my brother was sick as a child as well. So she was, while I was feeding the baby, there's not much for her to do with me or with the baby. So she was chatting with the nurses and talking with some of the families of the other babies, because my baby was born 9.5 pounds. But she was in the NICU with kids that were 4 pounds, 3.5 pounds. So they were little babies, and they were having a lot more difficulty with other things. She needed antibiotics and she needed oxygen every now and then. But she was relatively healthy compared to the rest of the kids that were rest of the babies that were in the room with her. So my mother was chatting with another family, and then she realized that I didn't look good. So I had huge red blotches all over my neck and chest, and I was so pale. We have pictures from that day. It's disgusting the way I look. It's awful. It's something you don't even want to look at. You're just like, oh my goodness. But yeah, so they had to take me down to emerge because I wasn't a patient anymore, which is ridiculous. But anyway, so I went down to emerge, and I had to be admitted again as a patient. So we went through that process, and sorry, who can talk while you do eyeliner? Oh, hair on my face. So yeah, they get me admitted to emerge and get me all hooked up. Oh crap, that was not good. I don't know if I can do this whole makeup and talk thing. I'm not sure, guys. But anyway, they had a really hard time getting an IV in me because I was discharged. I didn't have an IV anymore. It got to the point where they even started talking about doing a cut down. My mother had to beg them not to, because I don't know if anybody knows what cut down is. If you don't, I'm not going to explain it. Go Google it. No offense. But yeah, they finally got an IV, and they started getting fluids and stuff into me, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. The doctors just kept kind of circling and what's wrong, and they were asking ridiculous questions. I remember them sitting there and asking me silly questions, and it was like, why does all this matter? Like, they were asking me how many pregnancies I'd had. I had miscarriages before, and I'm like, why does this matter for what's wrong with me right now? It didn't make sense to me. But anyway, I was also so so my mother ended up finding a nurse that we personally knew because my brother was in that hospital so much growing up as a child. And she found a nurse that she said, come here, please. I want you to swab her incision and send it away for tests. Because they kept ignoring the fact that I said, there's something wrong with my incision. They looked at it, oh, it's fine. There was yellow stringy fucking stuff coming off of it. It smelled bad. It wasn't fine. I don't know exactly what happened. There was talks of lawsuits, but then by the time it all ended, I was just so happy to be home with my baby. I just wanted to be happy. I didn't want to worry about all that stuff. So I just let it all be. There we go. That one's better. So I ended up with 2 different bacterial infections as well as cellulitis, which again, if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's fun. Sean had fun playing with it. It was like I had Play-Doh under my skin. You could push on my skin and it would indent and it would stay. Sean made it look like I had 2 or 3 belly buttons at one time, and it was some to try and ignore the fact of what was really happening in our reality. It was easier to play with my Play-Doh belly than to think about what the fuck was happening to us. But anyway, so as I said, I ended up with 2 different bacterial infections as well as cellulitis. So I was put on a broad spectrum IV antibiotic, and for the first 2 days, I wasn't allowed to get up out of bed. I was allowed to get up to go to the washroom, and that was it. So I got really, really upset because I couldn't see the baby, and the dog is going crazy upstairs. I don't know why. So sorry, I'm just listening to see if there's something I have to take care of. There's a lot of banging and dogs barking going on. That right eye did not come out well. That's what happens when you're trying to talk while you're doing makeup. So they eventually ended up bringing her to me because I was so upset and a little bit kind of depressed that I couldn't see her. They started worrying that it was getting bad. So they brought her to see me, and then it made it all better. But yeah, so we eventually got discharged. We eventually got to go home and be a family, have a baby, and just be new time parents, or first time parents, whatever you want to call it. We had some fun times with some of the nurses in the NICU. I had one nurse flick her in the head because she wasn't waking up to eat fast enough. Which I was not happy with. The fact that she flicked my kid in the head. A baby who's sick in the NICU gets flicked in the head because she's not waking up fast enough to eat. I don't think that's proper. But anyway. Yeah, it was an adventure. It was crazy. It was insane. The time that I spent in the emergency room before they figured out exactly what was wrong with me, it was insane. It was funny because my mother had actually forcibly made Sean go home that afternoon to get some rest. He had been at the hospital with me the whole time. He had like a little cot that he stayed on, and it was 4 days of nothing but hospitals and, sleeping on a little cot. So she, very kindly convinced him to go home, have a nap, take some time, because I was okay, or they thought I was okay. And the baby was okay. He could go home for a couple hours. She was going to stay with me. So, it was all right for him to leave. So when things started going bad, she called him, but tried to downplay the situation and told him that he should probably come back, but no rush. And I don't know exactly how she worded it to him, but that I was in a merge, but no rush, it should be fine. Well, he was sleeping when she called. So he didn't fully get the urgency of what was happening, or he didn't seem to get it, right? So it was 2 hours go by and he's still not there. So she had to call him again and be like, where are you, kind of thing. And then it was, oh, I just got out of the shower, blah, blah, blah. And she had to tell him, Sean, you need to get here. Like, this is not, it's not but she didn't want, we lived 25 minutes away, in the big city from the hospital. So she didn't want him to, drive like a maniac to get there and end up in a car accident or anything. But at the same time, she wanted him to get there, but she didn't want to freak him out, kind of thing. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Not too bad. Let's throw some lipstick on. Just to kind of finish the look, if you will. There you go. So yeah, he got to the hospital eventually, and it was a nightmare, but we all lived through it, and we've got our girl safe and sound. She's an amazing kid. Oh my goodness, I am amazed by her every day, and I'm not bullshit at all. She's amazing. The things that she's brilliant. She's all about human rights, people, treating people right and proper and good. She's an amazing human being, and I'm so proud of her. But anyway, that's my story of Andy, or Shabadoo's, birth. And I left out some of the horrifying parts. But that's okay. Have a good day, everybody.